Back in the human world, the best friend of Choi Siwoo has been trying to reach out for him in a couple of days. After school, when Choi Siwoo's best friend were about to go home, a mysterious number has called him. Choi Siwoo's best friend picked up the call even though he does not know what it is. To his surprise, it was his best friend, Choi Siwoo. Choi Siwoo's best friend asked him if something was wrong because he hasn't been showing up to the school, and his phone is also shut off, so his best friend picked up the number hoping it was Choi Siwoo. Choi Siwoo told his best friend, Yushin, that he wanted to say something to him, but unfortunately, he can't because of his situation that might make his best friend shocked. Choi Siwoo was packing his bags as he talked to Yushin. Choi Siwoo continued what he was saying and asks Yushin that he has a crazy favor that he has to ask him, and tells Yushin that it's okay even if he don't do it if he thinks it's too much of a favor. Yushin was willing to hear what Choi Siwoo's favor was and told Choi Siwoo to quickly tell him what his favor was. Choi Siwoo was still hesitant what he was about to tell Yushin and told him first that he could not ask other for favors because he only has him, his best friend, Yushin. Yushin was confused and had a mixed feelings on what Choi Siwoo was telling him because he had a strange feeling on a favor that Choi Siwoo will tell him. Even before Choi Siwoo was to tell him he has a favor to ask, Yushin was angry and shouted at Choi Siwoo over the phone and tells him what kind of nonsense is he saying and asks him where he is right now. Choi Siwoo tells Yushin that he has some unavoidable circumstances and also told him that his mom is going to go crazy when she finds out that he disappeared for a month without bringing anything. Choi Siwoo made an excuse and tells Yushin to tell his mom that he has gone to his mom's traditional martial arts training center in Andong, and told her to carefully phrase it and make his mom believe that he went there exactly just a month for him to really lose weight. Yushin tells Choi Siwoo that his excuse may be hard to believe because what he said earlier is that the martial arts center isn't a place to accept regular people. Even though Choi Siwoo knew that fact, he has no other choice but to make that excuse even though he thinks it will be an inconvenience to his best friend, Yushin. Choi Siwoo has no other choice, that's why he persuades Yushin to help him to have an excuse for his mom. Yushin sighs as he couldn't believe what Choi Siwoo was trying to do and told him that he will do what he asks, but he tells Choi Siwoo what his problem may be, that he said he can't talk about the reason. Even if Choi Siwoo told Yushin that he could not tell him the reason, Yushin still tells Choi Siwoo that when he thinks Yushin won't believe him, that's why he can't say it. He can just tell him because he was his best friend and might even be the one to help him in his problem. Choi Siwoo was hesitant to tell Yushin the truth about his disappearance and problem because someone was keeping an eye on him when he was talking to Yushin on the phone. Sol Mai's been with Choi Siwoo the whole time that he was asking a favor to Yushin. When Yushin asks Choi Siwoo what his problem really is, Sol Mai signed to him to be quiet and not say anything. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that it is okay to lie about everything, but telling humans that don't know about their existence is a violation of their rules in the yakai world. And Sol Mai that is with him in the human world will even be punished along with him. Choi Siwoo proceeds to tell Yushin that he really can't tell him the reason because of some circumstances. Yushin did not force Choi Siwoo to tell him and told Choi Siwoo that if anything happens to him and he can reach out to him, make sure to do so. The conversation of Choi Siwoo and Yushin has ended, as they agreed to help each other out. When the phone call ended, Yushin wonders that what he thinks about the problem of Choi Siwoo is not what he really thinks. Choi Siwoo sighs in relief when his conversation has ended and it went well based on what they agreed on each other. Choi Siwoo was feeling guilty on what he had favored Yushin and also lies to him because he can't tell him what is the real reason of his disappearance. When Sol Mai asked Choi Siwoo that he has a choice, that he can go back to the real world, he couldn't believe first what Sol Mai was telling him and confirms if he really can go back to their world and his normal life at instance. Choi Siwoo told Sol Mai that he heard that it is only possible to make him go back to the human world if someone was qualified. Sol Mai laughs at Choi Siwoo and tells him that what he said was true and also told him that she does not lie about what he said and does not make up things that don't exist. Seolhwa was quiet when Sol Mai was informing Choi Siwoo about going back to the human world. Sol Mai then tells Choi Siwoo that if he really wants to go back to the human world, then she can send him back to the human world at the very moment. Sol Mai proceeds to ask Choi Siwoo what choice does he wants and tells him to pick between the two choices. Choi Siwoo immediately made a choice and tells Sol Mai that it's alright even if he can't go back to the human world and would only leave the yakai world after a month, that he passed the test that he was supposed to take. Sol Mai was surprised by Choi Siwoo's decision and asked him why is it alright for him not to go back to the human world at the moment. Choi Siwoo eagerly told Sol Mai that if he leaves the yakai world and does not learn things properly right now, then something a lot worse than he can imagine is a lot worse than not being able to go home will happen. With the fight that Choi Siwoo experienced before Sol Mai shows up, he had been convinced more on staying and training in the yakai world with his mentor, Seolhwa. When a series of fights that Choi Siwoo recently encountered in the yokai world, he realizes that he must have the power to respond to such situations. Choi Siwoo has decided and was eager to hone his abilities further as a goblin. When Choi Siwoo was talking, Sol Mai interrupted him and tells him he was impressive and what he said just now was really cooler than what she expected for Choi Siwoo to say and thinks Choi Siwoo is like a protagonist. Seolhwa was pissed on Sol Mai's actions and asks Sol Mai if he was having fun joking with Choi Siwoo and tells her that to give Choi Siwoo what he needs to give him. Seolhwa tells Choi Siwoo that Sol Mai was just teasing him and there's no way that will be his reward. Seolhwa tells Choi Siwoo that Sol Mai has a bad habit on letting other on for no reason and lying to other as she led them to make them believe what she says. Sol Mai defended herself and tells Choi Siwoo that she did something called a test to know others' personality, and as well as what kind of mindset that they have when they answered the choices. As Seolhwa and Sol Mai were talking, Choi Siwoo wonders about Sol Mai and thinks that her way of speaking and vibe is different from other monsters. Sol Mai then asks Seolhwa if she had finished reading the book that he gave him last time. When Seolhwa heard about the book, she made a comment that the book is full of nonsense theory and was so childish that she wasn't able to make it past a couple of pages. Sol Mai was frustrated that Seolhwa did not read the book that he personally made her to see and tells her that if he wanted to turn into a human, he has to at least memorize the MBTIs. Sol Mai changed the topic and proceeds to tell Seolhwa that he will take Choi Siwoo out somewhere for a little while. Choi Siwoo was confused when Sol Mai says that he was thinking of taking Choi Siwoo out since from the very start. Seolhwa immediately agreed and tells Sol Mai that he can take Choi Siwoo as she pleases. In a span of a minute, Sol Mai changed her form. Choi Siwoo was surprised after he sees Sol Mai has changed into bird. Surprisingly, Sol Mai changed into a big demonic crow that Choi Siwoo was not expecting. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that what she told him was true and that she is a monster that has the right to go back and forth to the human world. Under a condition, Sol Mai is responsible for everything that happens once every 6 months for a single, and is able to take an unqualified monster out into the human world. Seolhwa looks at the big Sol Mai as she tells Choi Siwoo that he'll probably feel nauseous going back to the human world and tells him that she thinks he could handle that much. Seolhwa looks at Sol Mai and Choi Siwoo as they flew away to come to the human world. After Choi Siwoo called Yushin, he thanked Sol Mai for letting him borrow her phone and told her that thanks to her, he was able to alleviate his worry to an extent. Sol Mai takes the phone and told Choi Siwoo that she was glad it was helpful, and asks him if he will be alright just calling one friend and tells him that he has time left so it will better if he calls his family too. Choi Siwoo tells Sol Mai that the only family that he has now is his mother, and unfortunately his mother has left town on a business trip. Choi Siwoo was in fact relieved that his mother was not home because if she was, Choi Siwoo thinks her mother would have made quite a fuss. Sol Mai was asking Choi Siwoo if he really would buy her a dinner as payment to what she did. Sol Mai was glad that Choi Siwoo had asked her because she has really something that she wanted to try since the first time she made a trip in the human world. Choi Siwoo was curious what Sol Mai wanted to eat because she said it was a bit hard for her to eat so she hasn't had a single opportunity to eat the food. Choi Siwoo prepared homemade food that Sol Mai was telling him. After the food is set on the table, the two of them got ready to eat. Choi Siwoo told Sol Mai that he tried to set up the table with everything that he has at home and asks Sol Mai if she will really be satisfied with only what he made her. As Sol Mai was eating, he tells Choi Siwoo that she was pretty satisfied with the food he had made because she always wanted to try homemade food a long time ago since the human food that she only tried are the food she had bought herself, and as well as school food. Choi Siwoo was curious when Sol Mai mentioned the school food. Surprisingly, Sol Mai attends a school Hajun High. Choi Siwoo was surprised that Sol Mai's school was right next to his school. As they were eating, Choi Siwoo listens to Sol Mai as she told him that she had been attending school since the beginning of the year, but did not have a friend at school that he was close enough to visit their home. Choi Siwoo wonders what Sol Mai says and thinks otherwise that judging from Sol Mai's personality, she seems like the type to have many friends. The two of them had finished their meal. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that the food was really good and has a different vibe from the food that can be bought at a restaurant. Sol Mai brings out a scroll and tells Choi Siwoo that she will give him the reward that she had mentioned earlier. The scroll that Sol Mai brings out is called the Monster Storage. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that the scroll is like the bag and smartphone that they use in the human world. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo how to use the scroll and demonstrate to him what the scroll can do. Sol Mai unexpectedly does something to the scroll. Inside the scroll, Sol Mai brought out something like a box. She told Choi Siwoo that this is how he can store and take out items in the scroll. He can carry item without having to think about the weight or size of them. Sol Mai gave out the box to Choi Siwoo that he gets from the scroll and tells him that the scroll had other uses besides storing. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that if he uses his scroll a few times, he'll be able to familiarize himself with the scroll pretty easily. Choi Siwoo opened the box storage and sees different things inside. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo what is in the box and told him that the one thing in the middle is the monster storage that he will be using, and the pile of coins on the left is called Goblin face coins. Choi Siwoo held the sword as Sol Mai explains that the Goblin face coins have a quite high value even in the monster world, and that the 40 nyang that he received in the box is quite a big amount, so he should use it carefully. And the last thing on the box is the Goblin treasure that's been passed down to generations, and they're items that can display various abilities by creating monster force. Sol Mai wonders and asks Choi Siwoo if he knows the old human folk tales that occasionally pop up. When Grandpa Bogeman gave the box to Sol Mai to deliver it to Choi Siwoo, she was pretty surprised that Grandpa Bogeman has told her to pack it along with her, and says to Choi Siwoo that it seemed like Grandpa Bogeman has some high hope for him to give him the Goblin treasure. Choi Siwoo thought that the high hope that Sol Mai meant is in regards to the great festival that is to pick the king of the monsters. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that even if they aren't to the extent of human, them monsters also feel a sense of belonging towards the human race. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that if a monster from the Korean peninsula becomes the monster king, it will be something to talk about, but heard that it was regrettable during the most recent great festival. Choi Siwoo was surprised that someone from the Korean peninsula has almost become the king of monsters. From what Sol Mai heard, the almost king of the monsters from Korean peninsula has been in the festival till the very end and had an incredibly close match with the current monster king in the monster world. Choi Siwoo thinks that not being the monster king then is quite regrettable. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that the most interesting part was that the monster who was almost about to be the king is a goblin like him. The goblin was so strong that no one could rival them in the entire history of the monsters living in the Korean peninsula. As Choi Siwoo held the goblin treasure, he tells Sol Mai that even after hearing stories about the festival, he still did not know that he was a monster until Grandpa Bogeman kidnapped and take him to the monster world. Choi Siwoo still has a part of him that has made the situation sink and wonders what all of this that is happening to him. Choi Siwoo then tells Sol Mai that he wonders every time, thinking that he wishes he could wake up quickly as if everything was all just a dream. Sol Mai thinks the opposite, because she thinks Choi Siwoo adapted quickly and quite well to the situation for someone to say something like that. Choi Siwoo was curious when Sol Mai told him that even when she met him in the first time earlier, and heard his resolve, he left quite an impression to her, and tells him that if he had made his resolve, it might now be bad to think to set his goal a bit higher. Sol Mai told him that humans like him are being threatened by the resetting of laws with the change of the rulers and is what they are afraid of. If what Sol Mai told Choi Siwoo the case, then he can become the monster king and maintain the current rules for the next 666 years. Choi Siwoo then asks Sol Mai if he can ask her a question. Sol Mai happily responded and tells Choi Siwoo that he can ask her whatever he wants because she feels like he made a human friend, and tells him that if he was curious about something, she will try to answer to the best of his knowledge. When they were busy talking about the situation, Choi Siwoo noticed that something strange has appeared in the monster storage next to Sol Mai. Sol Mai also notices what Choi Siwoo was pointing at the monster storage as it flashes and displays that it has an emergency. The one displayed emergency in the monster storage is an emergency call order. It reaches out to the monsters in the area whenever there's a serious emergency situation that is happening. Sol Mai explained that an emergency call order appears and sent down in the human world is the only reason that it would happen is because some monsters broke the rules or they harmed a human in the human world. Even though the emergency order has been displayed in the scroll, Sol Mai was calm and tells Choi Siwoo that something like that has not happened once in the past few decades, so there is no way an emergency call order would happen. Suddenly, Sol Mai realizes something was wrong and gasped the situation. Sol Mai suddenly freaked out when she realizes that an emergency call order has been displayed to the scroll. Sol Mai left Choi Siwoo in the house as it still has an emergency to handle. Choi Siwoo tried to snap his fingers to call out the scroll. When Choi Siwoo snapped his fingers, the scroll appeared in front of him. The goblin treasure was displayed on the scroll, and Choi Siwoo tries to put his hand closer to the scroll to try get the goblin treasure out of the scroll. As he gets the goblin treasure out the scroll, Choi Siwoo tries to put it in his arms and wonders if he puts it in the correct place or is it like an armor, and thinks that he should ask Sol Mai how to use it when she gets back. Choi Siwoo looks at the time as he was wondering what time Sol Mai will be back. Sol Mai hurried to leave the house as it's a little past 6 in the evening, and half a day is 6 hours, and since she came at 4 in the human world, they just need to go back in the yokai world by 10 in the evening. Sol Mai tells Choi Siwoo that she will be back quickly and tells him to sit tight as he waits for her to return. Choi Siwoo then tells Sol Mai that he will wait for her and agreed to what she said. When Sol Mai was about to leave, Sol Mai looked back as he tells Choi Siwoo that he can speak comfortable to her because they are friends now and tells him to call her Sol Mai when she got back. It's past 10 in the evening and Choi Siwoo was wondering why Sol Mai hasn't got back yet and wonders something might have happened. Choi Siwoo thinks that if he knew Sol Mai wouldn't get back by 10 in the evening, then he should have gotten her number at least. As Choi Siwoo wonders about Sol Mai, he saw her father's picture in the cabinet and looks at it. Choi Siwoo wonders that if he has goblin blood flowing through his veins, then it's probably from his father's side. Grandpa Bogoman also said to him that Choi Siwoo was probably about a 4th or 5th generation of the goblin's bloodline, although he was just only a bit mixed. As Choi Siwoo looks at his father picture, he wonders if his father was aware that he himself was born of a goblin's blood. When Choi Siwoo was thinking about his father, he felt something strange from the window and thought it was Sol Mai. In the dark streets back in the human world, a human scream can be heard. A demon was strangling a human in the neck and the human struggles as the demon was attacking him. The demon is a large shadow-like demon that is most likely from the monster world. To the demon's surprise, it was attacked and has blown its body off. Sol Mai came to the demon that was attacking the human and shoots it with her magical power. He tells the demon that Sol Mai has been catching the demon again and again, yet there's no end on the demon trying to attack humans again. Sol Mai tells if the demon kept attacking humans, she really not going to have any feathers left. When Sol Mai attacked the demon, it noticed that it was wriggling and tells that demons like him does not even feel pain. As Sol Mai caught the demon's attention, it lets go of the human that it was strangling earlier. As the demon were trying to attack Sol Mai prepares to fight the demon. The human was trembling as they were attacked by the demon as his friend is seriously injured because of the demon that inflicted the injury to his friend. Sol Mai affirmed the human to not worry about the situation and tells him that his friend will be alright because the injury is not that deep, and she put on a salve to stop his friend's bleeding. Sol Mai also told the human that the ambulance will also reach them soon. The human was scared as the demon got big and returned to their location. As Sol Mai was alarmed to the sudden appearance of the demon again, the demon has charged towards her. Sol Mai stood straight and looks at the demon as it was about to attack her. Suddenly, someone came in Sol Mai's help and told her to keep her head straight because the day that rumors had spread that she had been beaten by that kind of demon will also be the day her entire family would not be able to go around with their head held high. Sol Mai tells the person that it is okay if the family isn't with a good reputation to begin with and tells him that she knew that he will be by her side when it comes to danger. A man asks her who she is calling Appa, and Sol Mai explains to him that if he was a bit older and closer to her, then that makes him an Appa, which was an older brother. Sol Mai tells him that if he does not like to be called like that, then she will call him by his name, Goyu. Goyu asks Sol Mai if there are other options to be called in a polite and courteous manner, and Sol Mai tells him that she can also call him Moriboni, but Goyu did not care and tells her to just call him whatever he wants. Goyu tried to manipulate the human and tells him to think that what happened to them was an unlucky day because a car that appeared in the alleyway hit him and his friend, and the driver ran away in a hurry until the ambulance comes. Sol Mai praises Goyu with his hypnosis ability and tells that she heard learning something separately is really hard to do. Sol Mai also told him that she also tried to learn from Xiaohua but instead got scolded and eventually gave up. Goyu tells Sol Mai that what she is a front runner and asks her how many have she caught up until now. Sol Mai tells Goyu that including the ones that he helped her, there is a total of 24 and there wasn't even a proper monster amongst them. The demon that attacked the humans are all shutterwalks that are all on leashes, evil spurts that are being controlled by someone. Sol Mai tells Goyu that based on what she saw, shutterwalks have killed 7 humans and injured 50 people and wonders who would do such thing. Sol Mai tells Goyu that she's sure the demons are aware of how heavy the crime of killing's human and what sort of amusement are they getting from such carnage. Goyu tells Sol Mai that what she thinks was wrong. The demons have been doing the crimes not for amusement but for gain. Sol Mai was confused what Goyu meant about demons killing humans for gains. Goyu tells Sol Mai that it's reasonable that she does now know what he meant because it isn't something that is well known in their generation. Goyu tells the story to Sol Mai that since the olden days, humans have been eaten up by goblins and it wasn't just to satisfy their sadism or appetite. Consuming human blood and human flesh is an incredibly potent, healthy food to them monsters. That's why goblins eat humans. Sol Mai couldn't believe what she heard about the olden days, and Goyu tells her that it was widely known fact a long time ago, and something that just wasn't passed to their generation. He then tells Sol Mai that she can easily become strong by eating human meat, and tells her that if the truth is known, the human world won't be as quiet as it is now. Goyu tells Sol Mai that he probably knows the fact since she had taken the qualification test, as there aren't many instances where young kids like them who are not even 500 years old would choose to struggle to take the complicated test. In their generation's perception of the human world, it's a boring and frustrating place where there's no real need to go in and out until the law changes. Goyu tells that at the current moment, when they are near the festival, everyone in the demon world has been searching desperately to be even the littlest bit stronger, and there is monsters who are aware of the secret regarding humans and are willing to take the risk. He tells Salmai that she should know well as she's helping Grandpa Bogeman that in the recent days, there have been many monsters that destroyed themselves by going too far to get stronger. Goyu tells her that not understanding isn't a motive to kill but a mindset. He tells her that if it was him, he would have never created that sort of mess. As the humans were still unconscious on the hypnosis, Goyu wonders that rather than attracting the attention by using evil spirits that can't even move delicately, he would have done it himself and surely capturing them one by one before eating them. Salmai says that the one ordering the monster must be extremely pathetic coward and thinks would a coward who is not able to attack humans who can't resist be bold enough to move themselves. Goyu tells her that even if they are evil spirits, if they have the skill to call forth hundreds of monsters, then they may think that it's safer to do that than step forward themselves. Salmai orders Goyu to tell the monster to stop acting cowardly. Salmai was surprised that Goyu did not want to call out the monsters. Salmai then left the place first and told Goyu to clean up the mess that the monsters made. Choi Siwoo heads to the window and looked out of it and wonders that he's sure that the window was closed just a second ago. When Choi Siwoo was looking at the window, someone was staring at him from behind and was inside his room. The man walked quietly and closely to Choi Siwoo unnoticed. The man thinks that he caught Choi Siwoo off guard and thinks it was so easy to target Choi Siwoo because of how defenseless he is and thought he wouldn't gone out of his way to put in much effort. The man quickly attacked Choi Siwoo without hesitation. When the man was about to hit Choi Siwoo dodges swiftly. Choi Siwoo grabbed the man's arms and tried to take him down as he released his power. As Choi Siwoo held the man in his arm, Choi Siwoo released the goblin's serum again as he threw the man outside his house. Choi Siwoo sighs and relied as he thought his heart was going to leap out of his chest. When he encountered the crazy monster in the monster world, he realizes that he does not want to go so far as to call it ability. Choi Siwoo wonders what is he really doing and wonders about the goblin's characteristics as he rarely get beaten twice, but with similar tactics. The fence of the window had been broken when Choi Siwoo threw the man into the ground when it was about to attack him. Choi Siwoo sighed in relief when he sensed the man from behind and even threw it out the window of his house. Choi Siwoo remembers the time when he was caught off guard from behind and the chill he felt when they attacked him off guard, so he was pretty relieved he adapted to the situation and made something change. Choi Siwoo knew that there was a suspicious man behind him. If he didn't recognize that it was the same feeling he felt in the monster world, then he would have been killed easily. When he threw the man down in his house, he checked the damage in hopes no one was caught by his toss because he tossed the man without thinking of his surroundings or any people that might be hurt in the process. When Choi Siwoo looked down to where he tossed the suspicious man, he was surprised that it was already gone. Choi Siwoo was shocked when he heard the man talk and told him that there is nothing to worry about. The suspicious man that attacked him seemed like he knew what Choi Siwoo was worrying about, so he tells Choi Siwoo that he has already put all the humans to sleep in the area where they're in. The suspicious man was a monster that had a tail and grabbed Choi Siwoo by the neck. The man that attacked Choi Siwoo tells him that the reason he puts the people into sleep is because when the people screamed at once, he would not be comfortable enough to handle the cleaning up. The man that attacked him showed his true form and asked Choi Siwoo if he really was the rumored goblin, because he expected that Choi Siwoo would strike him powerfully, and though his monster force is not that strong. As the monster was talking to Choi Siwoo, it grabbed his body from the window down to the ground. Choi Siwoo struggles to remove the tail from his neck and worries that it may throw him hard in the ground as the monster chokes him. The man threw Choi Siwoo aggressively on the ground like what Choi Siwoo did to him and unexpectedly higher from what he fell earlier. Choi Siwoo trembles as he hits the ground when he was thrown by the monster. The snake monster jokes on Choi Siwoo, telling him that he had no intentions of dropping Choi Siwoo so far. The monster continues to mock Choi Siwoo as he struggles to get up and tells him sarcastically that the ground has seemed to weaken after he fell when Choi Siwoo threw him. The monster told Choi Siwoo that the humans in the area will probably think that the damage was caused by a poor construction or a gas pipe explosion, and thought that the situation is quite an unfortunate incident for the people living in the area because the house prices may fall. Choi Siwoo still struggles to get up and the monster still continues to mock him because of how weak he thinks of Choi Siwoo. All Choi Siwoo could think is that the monster is the type to hurt humans and Salmai, who still hasn't returned. The problem that Choi Siwoo was facing right now was all because of the monster. The monster doesn't have the patience to fight with Choi Siwoo and thinks it was a nuisance to see Choi Siwoo struggle to live. As Choi Siwoo gets up, the monster turns into his full form, a big snake that was about to eat Choi Siwoo. When Choi Siwoo stood up, he had a hunch that at the moment, he would be facing a real danger. Before the monster thought of eating Choi Siwoo, he tells Choi Siwoo if he should give him a chance or just let Choi Siwoo get eaten by the monster. Choi Siwoo could not speak to the monster and froze at the moment, so the monster told him to not look at him that way since what he will do will not ever negatively impact him. The monster boasts to Choi Siwoo that he and Choi Siwoo is a class of different monsters and Choi Siwoo will die painfully if he struggles, and advises him to just choose to die quietly if the results are going to be the same. Choi Siwoo was shocked and surprised as the monster showed him a picture of him with his mother and used it to threaten him. The monster tells him that if he let him be eaten, the monster would let his mother off the hook and just devour others. Without hesitation, Choi Siwoo quickly charges at the monster when it hears about his mother and uses it to threaten it against him. Choi Siwoo punched the monster, but to his promise it was just a bait to provoke him to attack him first. As Choi Siwoo's power was about to be activated, he felt something strange about his body and could not bear to move. The monster sarcastically apologizes for the rude threat he made about Choi Siwoo's mother. Choi Siwoo trembles as the monster speaks to him. The monster stands in comfort as Choi Siwoo has been trembling all over his body. It seemed like the monster spoke up and attacked to him when Choi Siwoo punched him in the face. The monster mocks him as he knew that his provocation was successful to Choi Siwoo. Choi Siwoo trembles as he was poisoned by the monster when it sneaked up an attack on him. When Choi Siwoo attacked and touched the monster's ability was activated and poisoned Choi Siwoo when he touched him. The monster tells Choi Siwoo that he has an incredible ability, but can't use it on someone stronger than him, and luckily it worked on Choi Siwoo when he racked up his brains. The monster also tells Choi Siwoo that he heard that a bloodline like him is able to pin others down with just a stare. Choi Siwoo struggled and could not move his body as he mastered any strength in his body but couldn't because he was experiencing sleep paralysis. The monster tells that the rules in the monster world are unfair because weak things have no choice but to be preyed on by those that are stronger than them. Choi Siwoo still struggles to move his body as the monster tells him that if he knew how to use the thing that was on his arm, the goblin treasure, then things might have been different for him. Choi Siwoo looked at the photo of him with his mom as the monster had the upper hand in the fight. The monster was about to eat the weakened Choi Siwoo and tells him that he will remember him fondly, so he should keep it in his mind in his next life if he will ever be reborn. Choi Siwoo still thinks of a plan of how to move his body and wonders that if he can just have one move on his body then everything will turn out differently. When the monster was about to eat Choi Siwoo, he already figured out how to move his body. The monster was shocked that Choi Siwoo has been keeping all the magic powers in his hand and suddenly the tables have turned. Choi Siwoo finally moved his other arm and released a strong magic power. As he releases the power, he sighs in relief when the monster was blown off and did not eat him. The monster surprisingly dodged the attack and thought that he could have seriously died if the attack had hit him. The monster immediately recovered and attacked Choi Siwoo with its long tail. When the monster attacked Choi Siwoo, it flew over to the side and made an impact on the wall. Even though the poison has circulated to Choi Siwoo's body properly, he could still stand despite the attacks and made the snake monster wonder if a weak goblin is still a goblin. As the snake monster observed Choi Siwoo, it felt something strange to his body. A knife was pierced through the skin of the snake monster, so the snake monster wonders what was pierced onto his skin. Suddenly, a strange masked man arrived and had been saying some praises. When the praise was said out loud by the masked man, the swords that pierced through the snake's skin released enormous power and electrocuted the monster. Even though Choi Siwoo was weakened, he noticed the masked man that came to the fight. The masked man appeared to the scene and were most likely known to species that it was attacking up until now. The monster mocked the masked man that he was holding a useless weapon and has been deepening its voice and mocks that it was a human's specialty. The monster continues to mock the masked man and thinks about how the man got to the area. As he looked at the masked man, the monster thought that he was dangerous and was on another level than any normal being. The monster was wondering if he should leave or continue to fight and also thought that if he dragged things further, he might be in a dangerous state. The monster thought that Salmai is hard to deal with and Sam was Goyu because he thinks he will never defeat him even if he got back from the dead. To their surprise, the monster had a plan to damage itself and the masked man wondered what he did. When the snake monster damaged himself and poured out blood, a shudderwook on chains rose to his blood. The monster tells them that he could have saved the monster up until the festival, but due to the circumstances he couldn't. The masked man looked at the monster that appeared in the snake's blood. The snake monster told the masked man that what he brought out was a deity-class monster by nature, and when it was still sane, his name was far and wide from the west, and told the masked man he did not know how the monster ended up in that state. The monster tells the masked man that the monster was a pretty good match for someone who was crazy about looking good. As Choi Siwoo was still weak, the monster thought of finishing his business and still wanted to eat Choi Siwoo. The monster charged at the masked man and continued to fight him. The masked man tried to stab the monster, but it did not work. When the monster was pierced, it released a strong, enormous power. The masked man dodges it and proceeds to sneak an attack on the snake monster. The snake monster was surprised, as the masked man was about to attack him from behind, even though it was hiding behind the monster that he released. As the snake monster was caught off guard, the masked man pierced through him. The masked man immediately stabbed the snake monster in its head. Choi Siwoo was surprised that the masked man had successfully eliminated the snake monster and had actually saved him. The masked man then notices Choi Siwoo and tells him that he does not look like he is the same as the snake monster, and tells him that if he wanted to survive, he should answer his questions directly. Choi Siwoo asked the masked man what he was doing in the area and told him that he could not believe what was happening when he heard his voice. The masked man was confused about what Choi Siwoo was talking about. Choi Siwoo then proceeds to ask the masked man if he can recognize his voice. The man removed his mask and called out Choi Siwoo's name, and surprisingly, the masked man was Yushin. Choi Siwoo told him what strange look that he was giving him and tells him that what happened to him is a long story.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Leave a comment for the next part, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.